Welcome to episode 82 of Beer with Strangers. I'm your host, Tony Russo, and I'm joined this week, as I'm joined each week, by the very blue-shirted Doug Griffith. It's funny, I take the red out of my face such as I can and make them blue. Hello, Doug. How have you been?
More gray to me.
Yeah, it's not even close.
I'm doing well. And the weather report today is sun, but cold and possibly bad weather coming this weekend.
They're saying that it's a sandy type surge that they're worried about, which is interesting because I think I've talked about it before, but my hometown was one of the worst hit, and I have a cousin who really got clobbered, and she just got back in her house.
We're talking 50 mile an hour winds on the coast plus possibly. So and it's full moon, and that's going to be
which
huge.
is high tide.
Yep.
Now my town goes underwater at every high tide. Oh. You can't get in or out when it's just a normal high tide. It's going to be worse
now with the nor'easter.
Right, which is what happened. Which is exactly what happened last time. There was a high tide and it came in. But hang tough, guys. I'm sure everything will be fine.
And then on top of that, snow.
Oh yes, and here
3 to 5 inches of snow. But I've heard up north, possibly even 2 feet in places.
Wow.
So.
It's
blowing up.
That's the National Weather, the National Weather Service.
We'll find out. Anyway,
we'll find out tomorrow. But we're hoping for the best. Hang tough. They all have stilts. Like all the houses in my hometown are on stilts now.
Well, to get above the high tide.
Yeah, to get above the high tide. My mother's house isn't. My mother's house is just where it was, and it missed by that much last time. It missed by 3 inches actually last time. So hopefully it stays just 3 inches. Yeah. Hopefully it doesn't flood. But anyway.
But it's those sustained winds that blow things in and don't let anything out.
Right. And I remember my brother has this great video of them trying to drive away from the flood, but they didn't make it, and so they ended up losing that. They all saw their cars. It was a disaster. But good luck, guys.
Yes.
We're here for you. I don't know what we'll do.
On to beer topics.
I was in Annapolis all day yesterday. And
poor you.
It was so. So I don't know. I don't know if you know Kevin Addicts. Kevin Addicts is he's the beer lobbyist. He's the head of the Brewers Association of America of Maryland. He's a great guy, and he doesn't. I'll tell you. So he comes over to me and he goes, "Hey, hang on, hold on." I'm like, I got out of the reporting business, so I didn't have to sit through stuff like this anymore. But real quick story, if you have a brewery in Maryland, you are illegally giving grains to the farmer you're giving them to, and you go up, sorry guys, and you can get in trouble for that. Kind of, sort of. What happened was 1,000 years ago, the FDA made rules for giving livestock food. So if you wanted to sell or distribute livestock feed, you had to follow certain rules, and the FDA wrote down these guidelines. And
it's all for our general health.
Yeah, exactly, and also
we're not getting tainted.
Exactly, and especially exactly
all that
as well, and also especially when it comes to spent grain, because one of the things that we're talking about yesterday is for instance ethanol plants. You don't want the ethanol plants to give, to give the seeds a good rinse and send them out into your food supply. We get it, but that was the point of the legislation. Last year, actually, it may have been 2 years ago. I think it was 2014. We talk about this a lot here because, anyway. So in 2014, the FDA is like, we have all these breweries now, and we know that they're giving grain to the farmers, but that grain isn't inspected, it's not registered, it doesn't follow any of the rules that the ethanol grain is following. Is this a problem? And there was a huge lobbying effort on the part of the brewing industry to
get it exempted.
Absolutely, and also the FDA did the science. So they're like, okay, there aren't any instances of this. Brewers have been giving feed grain since forever. Since really for 400 years here.
And I know for a fact that Coors is a big part of their whole plan of things is self-sufficiency, and they give that back to the cattle, and then they get have farms that eat the stuff. So
right, and it's
great,
and it's great, and so then what happens is a clerk, and I there's no nice way to say it, and I'm not busting a clerk's chops too hard, but a clerk finds a paper and it's like, oh, I was by a brewery today. I wonder if they know about this. And they bring it in and they're like, hey, have you been filling out this form? And the brewer's like, no, I've been brewing for a decade. I've never seen that form. And as you know what, and let's be honest also, it's not a decade. It is 4 years, 5 years. I mean, Flying Dog has maybe been open. I don't know what's open on that side of the bridge that's been open for longer than 6 years. I don't know if there are a lot.
But Frederick Brewing was there before they were.
So. Right, yeah. So there's that. So there's a history of doing this.
Yes.
And it's just something that it never came up because there weren't so many breweries. And what happens is the head enforcement guy was talking about, he's like, these guys just go out, they're not looking to cause trouble, but they're also not allowed to shy away from it. So if they drive by, they're like, oh, I wonder what they do with their grain. Now I have to ask. So you go in and you ask, and the brewers were furious, and kind of understandably so, because after the FDA said no problem, like 7 other states are like, oh, well, now we have to check to see if we should register breweries and see if we should have the breweries things. And they all do the same thing. They do the tests, they do the analysis. And what drives me batty is that they're not like these 2 poor guys. They're chemists. These 2 state chemists, one state chemist and an underling at the Maryland Department of the Environment were there. Yeah. And they were there, and these brewers were just hammering them. And the guy, he's like, this is my 80. I got here on January 4th. It's like, I moved from Kentucky. I just took this job as a chemist. I don't know what I'm going to do. I just know that you guys are all yelling at me. And he was a nice guy, and he tried real hard. And they lightened up on him a little bit. But these are people who are scared because they don't want to be. It's not that they don't want to be regulated. They don't. This is.
Well, they're already regulated alcohol-wise anyway, so they just don't need any more regulation on the disposal of the grain.
Are you sitting down? Because this is one of the funniest things I heard yesterday. I heard this from one of the alcohol and tobacco people at the event. They were talking about destroying beer. It's like, what happens if you have to destroy beer? Can you pour it down the drain? Blah blah blah. 1,000 gallons or whatever it is, whatever they make, 300 gallons. And he was saying, well, if you have a sanitary sewer, you still have to get permission to drop it in the sewer. And he was explaining to me, he's like, but you can't put it in a landfill. And they're like, why not? And he's like, well, because it's toxic waste. It's considered toxic waste because it has alcohol in it.
Yeah.
And like, no, really, it just tastes funny. Like, you can drink it, but you can't pour it out in the landfill. Yeah. And so these are the kinds of things that that we were going over yesterday. It was amusing. It was a little disappointing. It was amusing. But
how long a discussion was there on grain yesterday?
I got there late, and it must have gone on an hour and a half. It may have gone 2 hours. It was. I mean, I was there for the last hour of it, and it was already heated when I got there. The guy didn't get to finish his slides. Like people, and I think that was the other thing that bothered me was one of the guys from the EPA was like, well, we can compost it, and he's like, we can just change it and have a composting program. And I wanted to grab him by the lapels and not be mad, but like, how do you not know about this? Yeah. Oh, yes, I do a beer podcast
but that's
every
a lot
week.
Of composting. And somebody's going to have to take care of location and
absolutely, and that's what
composted grain stinks.
Right, and well, what he was saying was, he's like, it's $150 permit, and the guy and one of the brewers is like, yeah, all right, let's just say it's $150 permit. What about we already have a plan? What about taking everything we do and re-engineering it to do something else? What about finding people to take it? Because farmers sometimes want compost, but sometimes they don't. They don't want it, when the weather's too damp.
But most farmers love the grain because it's good stuff, and
it's the good stuff, and they use high quality grain.
Yeah.
So it's gonna go away, but the law has to be enacted. So right now they didn't promise not to conduct any raids or whatever, but I think that they're going to be a little lax on enforcement while this bill works its way through. And I think they're going to try to get it in this session. I don't know if they will succeed or not. But that's their hope. Their hope is to get it in this session and get it repealed, get the exemption put in, and that's what and that's what I didn't get a chance to talk to Kevin much about that. But that was the thing that I was saying. I'm like, because I got there late, I didn't get to ask the question. I'm like, did they no? This has already gone away in like 1,000 other states, and he's like 7. Yes. So I'm sure that Kevin has everything well in hand, and he's gonna just what I told. I was speaking with Carolyn Marquise, I think today, or Dave. I don't know. It was on the internet, and I said, this is cut and paste legislation. This is what they said in California. This is what they said in Iowa. This is what they said in Idaho. I don't know why I picked those 2 states, but this is what they said in the other states.
The EPA has given their blessing that
the EPA, they already, the EPA doesn't, and everybody's like, you don't want to involve the EPA. This is an FDA thing. The FDA,
FDA, okay.
Right? So the FDA already said, from breweries in small batches, from breweries to small farms, we do not care. And everybody's like, we can change it. Don't change anything. Just say, look, that's what the FDA said. Don't go through the EPA to see if they can make an arrangement. Right. Because that's a lot harder to do.
For get any blessing.
Right. So that was the first piece of interesting news. The other thing, and I don't want to be too hard on anybody, and I don't want to name any names, but my book's done. My book will go back to the publisher tomorrow. I'm almost done. The proofing is I'm halfway done. I've got to proof 3 chapters between tonight and tomorrow afternoon and send it off. But anyway, so I was thinking of talking with Al Stewart at Stewart's Brewing, and he said when the craft beer, bubble heated up, when the craft beer boom heated up in the 90s, and all these, he said it didn't take long for people to realize that there's not as much money in beer as you think there is. Yeah. And yesterday there were a couple people talking, and you got the sense that they were like, "Hey, wait, how come I'm not printing money yet?" There was this one gentleman who was talking about how he'd been about how difficult a time he's having, blah, 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 and he hasn't been in it for very long at all. And I don't think he's doing the actual brewing. I think that he's paying people to brew and I was just like, this isn't like.
Well, it's.
You could have spent the money on lottery tickets. Yeah. This isn't how it works.
I mean, for breweries, equipment-wise, it's a big expense. There's lots of stainless in there, and there used to be some used stuff on the market, but with all the new.
Yeah, not for another 3 years.
Right. With all the new brew pubs and breweries opening, there's not much used stuff except if you're growing. And generally, if you grow, you're buying new, and then you're selling your used to somebody else. But there's so many things opening up that there's not that much used stuff on the market.
Right. And so that's what actually brings us to the second thing I wanted to talk about, because the difference between now and 5 years ago is, shelf space and tap handles.
Right. And how much more desire, you got the same amount of shelf space, but you got more products to put on that shelf.
The one of the enforcement guys at the from the liquor, alcohol, tobacco
control board
in Maryland was telling a story, and he said it's happened decades ago because the brewers were complaining that they were getting muscled out by Budweiser and things like that. And what are you doing to prevent unfair practices? Because there have been a couple things that one of the things that was interesting that they talked about was, I don't know if you recall that one of our local breweries couldn't get into a beer festival because they didn't have the right distributor. In Maryland, you can complain to the comptroller about that, and there's a fine that's associated with that. So I'll say something, because if no one can keep, if it's in your state and you have they may be able to keep you out, but if you complain about it, then they may have trouble getting a permit next time. And that's what they might say. They might say, well, if you're going to want to hold this event in our state and you're going to keep our brewers out of it, maybe you're not going to be able to get a permit. So that was one story. But the other story he told was about 2 guys from Budweiser came in and had a sandwich and some water, and paid for it with $100. The owner was the server, and they left a $100 bill on the table, and they got up and they walked out. And he said, and a week later, we called the owner in, and we're like, we want you to explain to us how that's not a bribe. He's like, we didn't catch him. There was a Miller rep at the next table, and he called right away. And he said, so those are the kind of things that, if there are unfair practices, don't be afraid to say something, because the Brewers are like, yeah, but they're on the same team now. Yes, but don't be afraid to say, if you see something, say something, kind of thing. But the other thing that was weird to me. Now, these were all Western Shore breweries. Nobody from here came. JT from RAR was there for a little while, and Carolyn and Dave Marquise were there from Chesapeake Brewing. Yeah. They're getting ready to open up a brewery right down in downtown Annapolis. And they also, congratulations to them, they got the contract to do all of the Navy's beers.
Yeah, I heard that.
For Annapolis.
Yeah, that's great.
So, so that was a good deal for them. But, it's more than they can do. So their contract brewing, I think at Peabody Heights or one of those. Is it Peabody Heights?
Yeah, I think it's
where Vince goes.
Yeah.
But anyway, and so they were talking about, how to grow, and everybody was talking about how much they wanted to grow and how far they wanted to reach to get. And I'm like, I don't
Everybody
know.
Wants to grow. But
yeah, but I don't know. Just because you want to grow, I don't know if that means that you get to grow.
Well, going to the tap space, there's so much tap space, and even though you may want to be on tap somewhere, somebody else is already there. You got to beat them out somehow.
Right. And what this returns to my push, and the push that I've been making both personally and professionally, is just like, sell it here. Make it so that, like, if I go into a restaurant, effective immediately. If I go into a restaurant and they don't have one local beer on tap, I want to say something.
Yeah.
Like, there are 10 breweries here. You don't have one on tap. You can't get, because that's what's important. What's important is that we're drinking our beer here.
Right. But understand the breweries have desires to make more income, and they make more income per glass if they can sell it at their establishment.
Absolutely.
So, but no matter how much they sell at their establishment, they're probably not going to get so big.
Right.
So the only way to get bigger is to get more locations. Even though you're going to be making less per glass, you're still going to be making more. So it's the economy of things a lot of times, that the more you make, the cheaper your ingredients become.
But the other thing is there's starting to be a little pushback from the restaurants, because the restaurants don't want the breweries to be able to sell beer out of the breweries. They want the breweries to have to distribute, because they're taking a real bite out of the restaurant business. The people
or the bars that
absolutely the restaurant
that don't really have restaurants,
right? Because and that's the thing, like. Places like Third Wave or like Burley Oak, where they're not a restaurant at all, are sucking a lot of liquor sales and food sales. Well, not Burley so much, but like there are food trucks outside of Third Wave, outside of Mississippi. I know that these are all Delaware breweries, but it's the same region, and that's the point.
But even Burley Oaks made it very convenient, and the restaurants deliver. I think they deliver to them. They've got the menus for all the local places.
Right, they're all happy to work together, and that's the thing. The cooperation that goes on here is different from what's going on across the bay, and I think that that's important, because when I first got up there, I was like, it's kind of a bummer that nobody from Eastern Shore came at all. But then I looked around and I'm like, oh well, this is a little messy, and B, the legislators from here, they know what to do. They don't have to be reminded. They see their legislators more often. It's because it's smaller. It's because it's closer. So I felt better about it. I went and visited the legislators because because I had time to kill, and I'm friends with one of them. So I just went.
And you still had the Brewers Association rep there, so
yeah,
looking out for everybody, hopefully.
And he does a good job, and I think that he is. But so Maryland is officially going to be February is Craft Brew Month, Craft Brew Lovers Month in Maryland. It's complicated. It's one of those things where they argued over the name so long that finally they're like, yeah, you know what? All of the names. We're just gonna say this. They gave us like a list of hashtags we should be using. It's like 40 pages long. I'm like, okay, whatever you like. But that was my day in government. Oh God, it was so hard. It was so hard. And so my
just think, if you were a rep, you got to do this every day.
I talked to that. Yeah, so there's Carl Anderton, who's a friend of mine. He used to be the mayor of Del Mar. He lives in town, and I was talking to him like, I could not do this. I have no taste for it. I followed. Maybe I was a reporter for too long to be in an elected office, but they don't.
How long is the legislative session? Is it 6 months?
Yeah, no, it's like 3 months or something.
Oh, 3 months?
It's quick. They're 3 months on, 3 months off, 3 months on. I think. I don't know. And that's the other thing. It's also embarrassing how little I know about what's going on. I'm like, did they pick up the trash? Government is working.
I mean, I grew up in Maryland, and I remember some of this stuff, but it's been 40 years ago since I had.
Well, and that's the thing. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but do you happen to know if Delaware has gone through the grain thing yet?
No, I do not know.
I'm sure it's coming. Hopefully they'll get over it in Delaware too, and that way we won't have to have any more shows about grain disasters anymore this year.
Dogfish seems to be on top of those things, and maybe they've already
maybe they just got one put through right at the beginning, because especially I know Dogfish resells, and so does 16 Mile, and so does Mispillion.
But I found out something just today, in fact. There are legal statutes, and then there's administrative
policies.
So it's possible that there's not in one, but it is in the other. Maybe just administrative. They said, "Yeah, we understand that," and that's made the policy for whoever's with the food and drug on the the administrative side for the state.
That's crazy.
I don't know.
Did you run in? Is anything bad happening? Did you run in?
No. I just learned.
Usually when you learn about a law, it's the hard way.
The state statutes kind of give you the broad stuff, but the administrative side is what the individual departments kind of make their rules from what the legislation says. But I know for the alcohol commissioner, he kind of makes all the rules up, and this is what.
And those are the new. They have the force of law.
Right.
One of the fun stories from yesterday was one of the brewers said, "How come we have to send 4 copies?" And the guys like you are not going to like this answer at all. We used to have carbon paper, and they said, "No, we're not using carbon paper anymore. Just have them print it and send it." And so you guys are printing it and sending it, but we're not going to make the photocopies.
Yeah. So we want 4 copies.
So that's why we want 4 copies. And and they're making a transition to doing things online. It's astounding to me that they aren't already, but they're still working on.
I know with Delaware, lots of things are almost everything for the state as far as taxes. I shouldn't say taxes. Business licenses, corporate fees. We have to pay if we make so much, you have to pay a corporate tax on that income. That's all done online. So it's gotten easier. And you get something back immediately that says you did this.
You did it right or you did it wrong, yeah.
So where you don't have to mail it and make sure it gets there on a certain day.
And hope for the best, yeah. Right. That's actually what I had to do for my book. I had to send them my request to use some photos. I had to send it in the mail. I'm like, well, the book's going to print. I hope they say yes.
I know. But they've made it, at least from my perspective, you can do credit card. You can put your checking account number and they'll take it out of your checking. So,
Maryland doesn't do either. They don't, alcohol, tobacco doesn't take credit cards. So
yeah.
I'm like, wow, that's crazy. I don't usually do business with.
Or I can see maybe not taking your credit card, but you put your routing and number
and just let it run
account number and comes
electronically.
Right. And you can see that next day because they process it overnight.
Comes right out. Yeah. That's what makes it. I stopped bouncing checks once I stopped doing everything electronically, because I'll look at my phone. I'll be like, I have money for that.
Yeah.
I don't have to remember what checks are floating out in the air. Everything gets paid, and that is convenient. So that's been Tax Talk.
Yeah.
with Tony and Doug.
At tax time.
At tax time, yeah. I guess it is coming up on tax time, which my daughter already filled hers out. She's so excited because she's 21 and she just
not much to fill out.
Nah. Send me my money back. You overcharged me. Send me my money back. So she's happy. She's already spending her tax return.
So all she has to worry about is getting her W-2.
Yeah, when she gets them, and she works for the state, so she gets those right away. It's very easy and quick. And so that was. I lost track of the other story. The other story was the tap handles. So we did that. That's good, because I was like, we have way more stories than we have time to talk about. And this one, I wrote the wrong thing down. But did you get a chance to read this story at all?
Yeah, doing brewing at farm brewing.
Right. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I think it's a great idea because it gives the farmers, direct. I mean, they got to grow a certain percentage of the stuff on their farm, whether it's be brewed or winery. Right. They have to grow some of that product there, which means it's being products that are grown here in the state, whether it's Delaware or Maryland. I think both states have something that allows you to do that. But that means more stuff grown here, and whether you get it from yourself or possibly even from your neighbor, it's more stuff local. Right. And it's also, and I think it's going to help us diversify, like the more diverse crops, because if you're growing specialty malts, or if you're growing specialty barleys to be specialty malted. Is that how that works, or is it just 6 row and 2 row? There are grains specifically for brewing, mainly 2 row. Right. But the 2 row is mostly for brewing, whereas 6 row is mostly for animals, at least here in this area. But the interesting thing is, it's just not growing right out of the field. It has to be malted. Right. So, and somebody told me somebody was opening a local malting facility now. Yeah, I cannot find them. Yeah. I might just walk over there and just get arrested or something, like get thrown out for trespassing, and see who shows up at court, or however that works. Did you say anything to Gloria? I did. She does not remember. Oh, okay. She said she knew. She said she heard. But that's the same thing I said. Everybody's saying they heard the same thing. But with all the local breweries, it'd be interesting if they would take that, but it's probably going to be more expensive grain, even though it's local, which reduces transportation costs. But the equipment to do it, and is it enough equipment or enough breweries in the area to support it? Yeah, because most of the grains we get U.S. wise come from out west. Wisconsin is where the Maltster Breeze is who we use. And they've got thousands of acres that they have contracted for the grain that they get. I'm sure that they can barely keep up. Huh? Yeah. They've just recently bought a malting facility. It was by RAHR, somewhere up on one of the Great Lakes, I saw. But they're Clinton, Wisconsin, and then this place, I can't remember the name of it. But I guess RAHR made a new facility, so they had a facility to sell. So wow. So malting is a big business because it takes lots of equipment to do it. Yeah, I know. So I'm sorry, Weiss is who you used? Breeze. Breeze. BRIESS. So do they have their own? So do they, for instance, does Budweiser have their own malt facility, or? I believe they do. And so Breeze just does homebrew and they do it for the breweries. Yeah, the smaller breweries. Right. And that's I can't imagine like how happy like a company like that must be, where they go from making $20 a year selling
like in the 1930s, selling like the little packets of malt, you know. And to this, that must be very satisfying.
Well, even during Prohibition times, the people making the beer had to get the malt somewhere.
Yeah. Well, you get it from the grocery store.
But that was malt extract.
Oh, this is actual malt.
This is malt. This is grains that have been taken out of the field and artificially germinated.
Right.
And you get a root at the bottom, and it's stopped before the sprout comes out the top, and then it's used for brewing purposes.
Right, and then they cook it,
so
give it flavors.
Al Capone had to be buying the malt from somewhere in Chicago. Well, it was in Chicago, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah, I guess. Well, out there in the Midwest, it's easier to maybe they were getting
it takes lots and lots of grain to make lots and lots of beer. So
yeah.
So it's interesting that
it got done at all.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are going to call it a day. Hello to Sean. I don't know if you're going to watch this later or if you're watching now, but hello. Hope you get better soon. Hang in. Any classes coming up?
Yes, got wine class this Saturday. Had a brewing class last Sunday in Lewis, and we're talking about an all grain probably in about 3 weeks.
Oh, that's cool. When you get a firm date, let me know. I want to promote it. I'm going to promote the wine. You guys do it on your Facebook page, right?
Yeah.
I'll share it onto the Shore Craft Beer. I have to start doing that anyway, so I'm going to start remembering to do that. And as for me, nothing. My book will be out in May. I'm talking at the Berlin Library on February 17th, so you know it's going to snow. I'm going to go hunker down. I've been on the wagon all week, and it's tough. But I remember. I wonder if people used to just drink on the weekends, and that's why Friday got to be so popular. Because I
haven't had a drink all week. I need one Friday.
Yeah, just like crossing that finish line. So here's the Friday, and as always, drink what you like,
and be happy.